Thanks for watching my video. If you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button and hit the like button at the end of this video. The little bit of money I make off of YouTube helps me make these videos and stay motivated. So what I'm doing is I'm marking a spot on the belt and a spot on the pulley where the new belt needs to land. So typically I put a mark on the pulley, I put a mark on the belt, and then I put a mark on the case somewhere to line up. So when I get ready to put it back together, I can compare the mark on the case to the mark on the pulley, and I know that the pulley hasn't moved. If the pulley moves, that is bad. So you definitely want to make sure that the pulley stays in one position. And if you're watching this video, you already know that you don't want to pay the $800 at the dealership or some mom and pop's maintenance shop that works on every breed and brand of motorcycles. $800 is just too much money for this job, especially if you're doing a monster. The 2-valve monster like this one here, very easy to work on. You can get the belts from Gotham Cycle for about $100. Just shoot them an email, tell them what bike that you're putting the belts on, and Mike will make sure that you get the perfect belt for your bike. And as you see, the belt just slides off the pulley. The back pulley, the drive pulley, the crankshaft, whatever you want to call it, it's a little bit tight there between the pulley and the case. I kind of fought to get the belt out of here. You probably could stick a screwdriver behind it and help force it out from between the pulley and the case. But yeah, it'll be okay. It'll slide out. And I'm pretty confident in saying that your crankshaft won't spin. So again, if you're still watching and you have questions about doing this job, here's the exact belts for this bike. I believe this will fit the 1100, possibly the 796 and the 696. But again, contact Gotham Cycles and he'll get you the exact belts that you need. Feel free to tell him that Ride WNC sent him his way to get belts. So what I do is I count the number of teeth between each spot, and you're going to do the same on yours because yours is going to be different from mine. I ended up with 24 on my horizontal belt and 27 on my vertical belt. I would kind of expect you to see about the same thing if you're copying my video exactly the way I did. But again, don't use my numbers. Use your numbers because you do not want your teeth to be off even one tooth on the pulley. But again, if you're watching this video, if you're watching it, you're contemplating doing the belts. If you have a monster, I can't stress it enough, do your belts. I have faith in you. I know you can do it. I know you can do it. It only takes minimal amount of tools to do this job. You need some Allen wrenches. If you have hex sockets, that's even better. It's easier to use if you have hex sockets. Get yourself a paint pen or a paint stick, either one, to mark these belts, mark the pulleys. What I did, I apologize for not showing you how I got to the belts. The horizontal belt is actually really easy to get to. There are only 4 bolts that hold that cover on. The hardest part about this entire job is getting the gas tank out of the way. So if you're looking down at your gas tank, that beautiful cover that's on your gas tank, that's all it is a cover. All those little screws that hold that cover on, all those screws that are around your gas cap lid, all those screws have to come off. And then the left side cover just slides back and out of the way. The right side cover slides back and out of the way. and then the covers are gone, and then you unbolt the gas tank from under the seat, and you can lift it up. And in this picture where I'm doing the vertical pulley, you can see the gas tank. So all I did was put a stand next to the left side of the motorcycle, and the owner brought me this motorcycle with the gas tank just completely full. So empty your gas tank before you even start this process, and it'll be a lot easier to move that gas tank around. But I moved the gas tank off onto a stand right next to the bike. The fuel lines are long enough to reach. Now I'm doing the crankshaft and the inner pulley, and I did put a dot on the case where the inner pulley is, so I make sure that everything lines up when I put it back together. So this belt was a little bit more difficult to get to, and like I said, this belt, you do have to have the gas tank off to remove the cover. So once that gas tank's off and you take the 4 screws that hold the cover on, it just slides straight up and out of the way. And then I removed this heat shield. This heat shield will allow me to get a wrench into the adjuster bolts that are in the case, and it'll allow me to loosen those. Once these 2 adjuster bolts are loosened, a lot of slack gets in the belt, and you'll be able to slide the belt off the pulleys with ease. So this bike only has 8,000 miles on it. It is 11 years old. The previous owner, not the previous owner, but the first owner of this bike did change the belts. The previous owner only rode the bike like 200 miles. Probably was not a very good motorcycle rider, and this bike scared the crap out of him. But good thing he sold it to us at a reasonable price, and we're doing the maintenance now to get the bike nice again. So again, the belt is very tight against the pulley, that crank pulley, but it does slide out, and then you just pull the belt out and then grab your other new belt, and we're going to do the same thing that we did to the horizontal. So I'm counting right now, and like I told you, I was at 24 on the horizontal and 27 on the vertical. So you see, I always count the teeth, and I always come back and I count the teeth a second time. Don't count the teeth just once, because you can't afford to make a mistake when doing this job. But I have faith in you. If you own a Ducati, you quite possibly have a job that allows you to afford to own a Ducati. So that means that you can probably count without taking your shoes off. So awesome on you for making it this far in life without being a dumbass snowflake. So here's the new belt. So I put a mark for my first notch, for my mark on the top pulley, and now I'm counting to 27. So I'm going to put a preliminary mark on the inside. So that's where I think 27 is. So now I'm going to come back and I'm going to count it again. And since college, I'm here to tell you, I really hate counting. In college, I thought numbers were a lot of fun. I enjoyed geometry and algebra. But now in this stage, I'm freaking old and I could care less about numbers, but it's very important. So I marked it. My mark did end up where my preliminary mark was. So now I have 2 good marks on my belt. So you see my upper pulley there is still lined up with the notch, the mark that I put on the case. on the cover. And when I put that mark on the cover, I went ahead and I made it so once the outer cover goes on the bike, you won't be able to see that mark. So you do the same thing. Don't start drawing white paint lines all over your Ducati. It makes it look like crap. Also, while I had the tank off the bike, I went ahead and I wired this bike for a radar detector. I hardwired a radar detector wire in, and I wired in heated hand grips. Here in North Carolina, where we're at, we like to ride year-round. Heated grips are a perfect complement to any Ducati, any motorcycle. It doesn't have to be just BMWs that come from the factory with heated grips. I think all the bikes should come with heated grips, but that's just me because I'm a wuss and I don't like it when my hands get cold. Alright, so there's our belt on our upper pulley, and it looks pretty good. And the belt kind of got hung on the adjuster pulley, so I just had to wiggle that belt so it got over the pulley. So your belts go inside of both of those pulleys that are in the middle of the cylinder. So make sure that your belt is inside both of those pulleys. And you see that my crank timing mark matches up on the belt. So I'm happy with that. And now it's time to tighten down the adjuster. So the belt doesn't need to be super duper tight. So don't strain yourself to get the belt as tight as you can possibly get it. Find a good place to put a long screwdriver down in there. And what I did was I put the screwdriver on the tip of the hex socket and gave it just a little bit of a pry, and then I tightened down one of the adjuster screws, and then I'm going to tighten down the inside adjuster screw. You will need, for this particular screw, you will need a universal joint to get in there safely. So if you're watching this and you don't have a universal joint, go out and buy one now. It'll save you a lot of hassle in stripping out that bolt. So there we go. Both of those bolts are now tightened down. You see I probably only put maybe 15 foot-pounds on there. So not a lot of torque. You just want it tight so the belt doesn't slip. And then you see the belt is just snug. It's not super duper tight. You don't want to have that belt really super tight because you want a little bit of flex in it, a little bit of harmonic. So when the bike warms up, and when the bike's going down the road and you're turning 12,000 RPMs, that belt isn't wearing things out. So here we go with the horizontal belt, and I will give you a secret to get these belts onto that pulley, onto the crank pulley. I did cheat a little bit, and I took the tip of my screwdriver and I pushed it in. So I will show you that, maybe, hopefully. So here we go. I'm just taking the tip of my screwdriver and I'm just pushing it onto the pulley. This will be all right. Just be careful. Don't scratch the paint on the case cover. Nobody likes to look at a bike with the scratch on it. So be careful when you're jabbing your motorcycle with a sharp object. So I want to line up my crank pulley and the timing mark I put on the belt, and I've got a little bit of play in the belt on the back side of the pulley, and you're going to see me have some issues with that in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to line up the front pulley, and right here is where you see I just don't have enough room to get that belt over the front pulley. And then once I get those teeth seated on that crank pulley, everything lines up and I have just enough slack to get it into place. And make note that you saw that front pulley turn, but it easily turns back to where you can line up your timing mark on the pulley and on the case. So that's your goal, to have all the little white dots in line with each other. So again, I'm going to tighten up my bolts that hold these pulleys into place. And I'm just using the tip of my socket as the lever to pry against. And the way this one's situated, you need to keep pressure on it as you're tightening it down. You saw that as I was tightening it down, the bolt was actually loosening the pulley. It was the complete opposite on the vertical shaft. It was actually tightening the pulley as I turned it. So, and then in the middle is the actual adjuster. So where the socket is now, that is the pivot point. And then we need to put our heat shield back on our exhaust. So we're going to throw that back on. Make sure that you have those insulators. There's little round like fiberglass washers, and they insulate the exhaust from heating up this heat shield, so you don't burn your leg going down the road. You want to make sure those insulators are in place. If not, you'll have metal to metal contact, and that metal to metal contact will conduct the heat and radiate it off. And when you bump your leg on it, especially you geniuses who think it's okay to ride around in shorts, you will burn your leg on this. So, you know, make note of that. So I really love this bike. This is probably one of the better bikes I've worked on. As far as changing the belts, it might be the easiest Ducati I've ever changed belts on. It is far easier than the older super bikes with the 4-valve engines. Those doing the 2 cams can be a little bit difficult. And for the next guy who owns this bike, I went ahead and I cleaned off the inside of the vertical belt cover, and I'm going to deface it with white paint marker, and I'm going to put today's date. So this was actually done on 11/13. When I did this bike, it was probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I got so many other things going on during the day that I have to do the jobs that I have to focus on. I have to do those after hours, so I don't lose my train of thought. I don't have people coming in and out bothering me while I'm trying to do the job. So I want the job to be right the first time. I don't want to have to try to start this thing and one of the lifters being, one of the valves being stuck open and the piston hitting the valve. That's no good for anyone. So holding these on, there are a few short screws, and the short screws go to the end of the covers, and then the longer screws go to the inside down by the crank part of the covers. So right now I'm just putting the covers on, just the screws are just snug, and then I'll come back and I'll tighten them down later. So this is a long screw, and that long screw actually has to go through a wiring harness. I'm going to show you that in a second. I'm going to come back and do that one. But I'm going to go ahead and put the front cover on first, because I'm pretty sure that one of the screws has to go through your horizontal and vertical cover. So again, here's a short screw. There's a short screw for the top. And then we're going to go ahead and put another short screw in the bottom. Another cool feature of this bike is dual spark plugs. Who would have thought Ducati was genius enough to use 2 spark plugs per cylinder? That's awesome. So here's a short screw that's going to go in the bottom of the horizontal. And I apologize, I'm old. It's getting more difficult to get down on my hands and knees and do stuff like this. Guaranteed my next house is going to have a lift table so I can get the bike up in the air. I should be able to get better videos once I have it. So here are my long screws. So the shorter of the long screws is going to go on the top, and then the longer of the long screws is going to go through the wire harness that runs behind that exhaust and then through these covers. You definitely want to make sure that you make sure that you have that long screw going through that wire harness. You do not want that wire harness flopping in the wind. It's very close to that exhaust, so yeah, nothing good can happen from a wire harness resting on the exhaust while you're heading down the highway. So as you can see, I just tightened them down. I didn't put a lot of force on that Allen wrench. You know, I just gave it a good tight twist just to make sure that those screws don't fall out. And then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna touch them again just to make sure that everything's in there tight. If you have to go to Ducati and replace just one of those screws, it's going to be over $5. So just a heads up, it's worth touching them at least one extra time. I would almost say blue Loctite would be a good suggestion to put on those, but I seriously doubt you're going to lose one of those. But thanks for watching my video. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed it.